Greetings, it's your girl Isis Wisdom of the Isis Wisdom Show. And when you get a chance, make sure you log on to my website, www.isiswisdom.com. That's ISIS wisdom.com. If you love hip-hop, because you know I have a hip-hop audience, make sure you guys log on to wordonthestreetsmag.com. Tonight we have a very, very special guest. His name is Stewart Swerdlow, the only survivor of the Montauk experiment. If you guys know anything about this, and you guys already know what kind of a guest and author that this is, he is also the author of the book Blue Blood, True Blood, which I found that book to be very, very profound. I mean, he's talking about some things that will really open up your eyes and kind of shift your perspective over a little bit. And I'm just really excited to have him here. Hello, Stewart. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you? I'm glad to be on the show.
Yes. People are now starting to line up into the chat room. They have been waiting for this show. I had you up on my website for like 2 weeks, so they were really excited about you being on our show tonight. And just for those who don't know who you are, let's break down and let's talk about your background. Let's talk about who you are and why you wrote the book Blue Blood, True Blood.
Well, first of all, I have very interesting history family-wise. My great uncle was the first president of the Soviet Union. In fact, before the revolution, he was roommates with Stalin in the Gulag. And Stalin wrote a lot about him. And my grandmother was a communist Russian spy. Of course, that was in World War II, when in those days the Soviet Union and the Americans were allies against the Nazis, so it was okay back then. My grandfather was sent here to the United States to help start the Communist Party back in the 1920s and 30s. And because of that, I was very closely monitored. My whole family was very closely monitored by the U.S. government up until this very day. And that is why back in 1970, I was taken into service in the Montauk Project. And by the way, I need to correct one thing. I'm not the only survivor. There are many survivors. So I don't know where that came from, but there's many out there.
Okay, I do apologize. I had read something on you when I was doing some research, and I thought I had read something that said that, but I do apologize. I'll make the correction. Okay, so let's talk about your experience through the Montauk Project and whatnot. What is that? Can you explain to my audience exactly what that is and what your role was in it?
Yes, the Montauk Project existed from 1970 to 1983 in Montauk Point, which is at the eastern end of Long Island, New York. It was part of an underground area that was actually started by George Washington back in 1799 when he built a lighthouse and an underground storage area to have weapons and supplies against British invasion back then. And over the centuries, it was added to and grown to encompass a very large part of that eastern part of Long Island. But even as they dug deeper into the ground, they uncovered underground areas that were previously existing and were actually part of an Atlantean archipelago that stretched from Montauk Point down into the Atlantic Ocean, even into the Caribbean. So it's quite a fascinating thing that they found there with technology and all sorts of interesting artifacts. And I was used for genetic experiments, mind control projects, everything that you can think of. In fact, because of what they did to me for 29 years, I was physically blind. All I could see was energy fields, and what they were trying to do was create a person who could see into other realities without the use of devices, basically making you into a human machine or computer. And so for that many years, all I could see was energy. And that's how I do my work today. Of course, about almost 11 years ago now, I had surgery to reattach my optic nerve to my brain, and now I can see physically, but I also have the overlay of the energy. So when I look at a person, I see their physical body as well as their energy field and their organs, DNA, etc., and their mind patterns, and that's how I do my work. Montauk Project began as an outgrowth of the Cold War. As your listeners may know, back in 1947, when the Roswell event occurred, that was a staged event so that there would be fear. The Nazis were gone, the communists were kind of distant, and so they needed to create a fear for the American public and the global public so that they could create control systems in order to alleviate those fears for the public. But when they realized that basically a few 100,000 people cannot control 6 billion people or more than that at this point, armies and weapons aren't enough, and so mind control, they felt, was the best thing to control the population. And that's what Montauk was really about. And from that, they also did weather manipulation, all kinds of rituals that occurred there. It was quite basically a hellhole. Thinking of it underground, there were 9 levels of it underneath the earth that connected to ancient tunnel systems